So this one was a special one because it was a surprise, and I was not expecting what I got going into this because I was under the impression that I had read every Jack Reacher book except for Tripwire. I thought that was the only one I hadn't listened to, and I thought I had listened to all the other ones several times over. But a couple pages in, I realized I've never read this. And so imagine how excited I was to be reading, for me, a new Jack Reacher story. I mean, I haven't been in this position, I haven't had this feeling probably in 5 years, because when I discovered these novels, I quickly became obsessed and read every book I could get my hands on, one right after the other. And I had gone through the list time and time again to find which ones I had read and which ones I still had yet to read. And for some reason, I thought I had already read Persuader. But no. So this is my first time reading this story. And I gotta tell you, I'm really glad that I'm reading it now. Or that I read it when I did. To be honest, I haven't been thrilled with the last couple of books that have come out. So it was nice to get this story from the early 2000s, when Reacher was still a relatively new character, and it was awesome. I think I would probably put this in my top 10 Reacher novels. I mean, it was genuinely that good. It was a classic Reacher story, and I wondered for most of the book why it was titled Persuader. I couldn't figure it out, but eventually it is revealed towards the end that Persuader is another name for a specific type of shotgun. Okay, so now that you've kind of gotten where I was at going into the book and what I thought overall, let's get into the story a little bit more. So we're going to be talking spoilers coming up here. So yeah, let's get into it. So this book puts you right into the action in a way that most of the other books don't. Some of the books put you into the action, but that action ends up being irrelevant to the story. It's just a little intro, and then Jack goes on to have a completely different and unrelated, or only loosely related adventure. But in this story, they throw you right into the action. And it's actually really clever. The reason they can throw you right into the action is because this opening scene is actually smack dab in the middle of the story. The scene you get at the beginning actually happens a bit later in the actual story that's being told. So in a very Tarantino-esque style, which I love, we see this big action sequence, this kidnapping taking place, or attempted kidnapping, where Reacher swoops in, saves the kid being kidnapped. I mean, he's not actually a kid. He's a college-age guy from a wealthy family. But anyway, awesome action scene. Reacher swoops in, grabs up the attempted kidnappee, and makes a clean getaway. But we eventually find out. Now, this is where we get into some real spoilers, okay? So if you haven't read it, stop listening now and come back later. So this might be the only time, I can't remember it happening this way in any other book. All I know is I really enjoyed it. When we end up finding out, we go back and we get the backstory behind this opening sequence. And it turns out that Reacher is undercover. He's actually trying to get on the inside of this kid's parents' crime family. So Reacher's brought in by the DEA because he had been inquiring about a man from his past, a man that he spotted in public, that he swore was dead. So Reacher gets in touch with all his old military contacts and does some research to find out if it's possible that this guy is still alive. Well, the DEA happened to be investigating someone connected to this person. Reacher's inquiries grab their attention, and then they reach out to Reacher and then recruit him to help with the case. They have someone else that was in there undercover in this little crime family, but now that person's disappeared, gone radio silent, and they don't know what happened to her. You know, they don't know if she's been captured or killed by this family, and so they bring in Reacher for help, and he agrees to go in undercover himself to try to figure out what's going on. Now, I'm not going to go through the entire story beat for beat, but I mean, that setup alone is ridiculous, right? I mean, That's intriguing as hell and a perfect setup for a badass story. Not only did I enjoy this overall narrative and the way they went about it by starting in the middle and then backtracking and then going through the entire story, putting us in the present moment. Another thing I enjoyed about the story is that this is only the second book in the Reacher series, if you're reading them in order, that is in the first person. So we get to be in Jack's mind throughout the story, and I love it. You know, it doesn't happen often, but every great once in a while, we get one of these first-person narratives, and those are my favorite. And then maybe my favorite thing about this book is we get one of the most badass, maybe the best, Reacher throwdowns in the entire Reacher book series. I love when they match Reacher up with someone way bigger than him that he has to take down. They do it in a few books, and every time they do it, it's incredible. But this one, like I said, it might be my favorite. This might be my favorite Reacher versus bad guy one-on-one throwdown. So he has this epic showdown with a character named Paulie, a huge 400-pound, 7-foot-tall guy who at one point in the story, Reacher kicks in the ribs with all his might, and the guy doesn't even flinch. Okay, so we've got amazing storytelling, an awesome story, and an epic mano-a-mano fight. Reacher stories don't get much better than this. As I said, definitely a top 10 book for sure. I won't keep you here much longer, but this is now one of my favorite Reacher stories, and I'm so glad in retrospect that I missed it and now got to enjoy it, you know, years after I thought I had read every Reacher story. So it was an awesome surprise and a story that I would definitely recommend to anyone. But if you're a Reacher fan, it is required reading. All right. If you enjoyed this video or podcast, here's what I do. Every day, I pick a random topic. Usually it's entertainment or pop culture related. I definitely do these Reacher book reviews. I do a lot of Reacher content, but I also talk about other pop culture stuff, movies, TV series, books, and sometimes I even share ridiculous stories from my questionable youth or random thoughts that I have, but I try to keep it interesting. So if that's something that you can vibe with, you know, if you'd like to get something new and interesting in your feed every day, then please subscribe to the channel or favorite or follow the podcast. And if you do that, if you decide to stick around, then I will talk to you again tomorrow. Thanks.